The sun had just set, and the sky was fading into deep shades of blue and purple. The day had been long and full. Jesus had just finished teaching a large crowd and feeding thousands of people with only a few loaves of bread and some fish. It was a moment no one there would ever forget. After that, Jesus told his disciples to get into their boat and go ahead of him across the lake. He wanted some time alone to pray. So the disciples obeyed, climbed into their boat, and began rowing across the water as night settled in. At first, everything seemed normal. The water was calm, and the journey was familiar. But as the night grew darker, the wind began to rise. What started as a gentle breeze quickly turned into a strong, howling wind. Waves crashed against the boat, rocking it back and forth. The disciples, many of whom were experienced fishermen, struggled to keep control. Hours passed, and the storm only got worse. The boat was now far from land, surrounded by darkness and rough waters. Fear began to creep into their hearts. They were tired, wet, and unsure if they would make it through the night. Then, in the middle of the storm, something unexpected happened. Through the darkness, they saw a figure walking toward them, on the water. At first, they couldn't believe their eyes. Fear took over, and they cried out, thinking it must be a ghost. But then a familiar voice spoke to them over the wind and waves. "Take courage. It is I, don't be afraid." It was Jesus. In that moment, something shifted. The fear that had filled the boat began to loosen its grip. But one of the disciples, Peter, wasn't just relieved, he was bold. "Lord, if it's really you," Peter called out, "tell me to come to you on the water." Jesus simply said, "Come." Without fully knowing what would happen next, Peter stepped out of the boat. His feet touched the water, and he didn't sink. Step by step, he began walking toward Jesus. It was something no human had ever done before. As long as Peter kept his eyes on Jesus, he was steady. The waves were still there. The wind was still strong. But none of it seemed to matter. Then, Peter looked around. He saw the size of the waves. He felt the strength of the wind. Fear rushed back in. And in that moment of doubt, he began to sink. "Lord, save me," he cried. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You have little faith," Jesus said gently. "Why did you doubt?" Together, they climbed back into the boat. And as soon as they did, the wind died down. The storm stopped. Everything became still. The disciples sat in silence, trying to take it all in. What they had just witnessed was beyond anything they had ever experienced. Then, one by one, they began to understand. They weren't just in the presence of a teacher or a prophet. They were with the Son of God. They bowed before him and said, "Truly, you are the Son of God." This story is more than just a miracle on the water. It's a reminder for all of us. Life can feel like that storm sometimes, unpredictable, overwhelming, and even frightening. We all face moments where we feel like we're losing control, like the waves are too strong and the night is too dark. But just like he came to his disciples, Jesus comes to us in our difficult moments. The key lesson is simple but powerful: when we focus on fear, we sink. When we focus on him, we find strength to stand, even in the middle of the storm. Peter didn't fail because he stepped out of the boat. In fact, he showed great courage. He only began to sink when he took his eyes off Jesus. And even then, Jesus didn't let him drown. He reached out immediately. That's the kind of love and support this story reveals, a reminder that even when our faith is small, we are never alone. So whatever storm you may be facing today, remember this: you don't have to face it by yourself. Keep your focus steady, hold on to faith, and trust that help is closer than you think. Because sometimes, the greatest miracles happen right in the middle of the storm.